Today, guys, we're going to be talking about how to get into your buyers' heads and boost sales with an AI workflow. This is something I've been doing for a little while with my own emails, and it's something that I've been training the copywriters and the sales reps on our client teams with. So we're going to go through exactly how to use what's called job stories and how to use ChatGPT specifically to help you brainstorm and create. This is not going to be final copy material, but it's going to give you a sort of another look at how to start choosing the right angles that you should use in your creation, in your sending out of emails that will automatically boost really the quality of the stuff that you're sending out. Now, we're going to look at exactly why certain cold emails don't work very well, and then why certain things we do here today are going to really shift the game, hopefully, for you, and how you think about the messaging that you put out. And if you get this right, it'll improve literally everything that you create, not just your writing, could improve your videos, it could improve basically all your communication with the people who you want to reach. Again, whether that's in person, online, on the phone, whatever. And that really starts because there are a couple of core problems that really crush the success of what should be good emails. So problem number one is, what do you choose to write about? You have really endless angles that you could approach your prospects with. You have all kinds of stuff that you could choose to talk about. You have things that I'm sure come up on a daily basis that you sort of look at, well, persona A might want to talk about these 20 subjects. Persona B might have these 100 subjects. Where do you start, right? And not starting with something specific makes it general. Making it general then turns your message into something pretty vague. So writing clearly can also be difficult, right? So I want you to consider for a second, how do you go about actually, basically creating messaging that really connects with people? Writing clearly is not the easiest skill in the world if you don't have practice. So if you have sales reps, for example, that are joining your team, and you give them a value prop, which is something I'll get into in a second, and say, okay, now go write an email. Even if you give them parameters like keep it short, make it direct, these things might help improve the quality of the email if you get it formatted correctly, get the word count right. But these are really things that move the needle a little bit, not a lot. So what I'd like to focus on here is how to actually choose angles that you can hand off to somebody or write yourself, whether you're the founder, a sales rep, or anything else, and just create a better email, regardless of the word count, regardless of the formatting, regardless of the UX, which of course you want to get all that right, but it's really about the angle. Are you even choosing to talk about the right thing? And then again, most messaging is vague and doesn't connect with the reader. If I'm sending out things that don't focus on specific problems, if I just send out things that talk about me, it really creates a message that at the end of the day, even if it's a good offer that you have, the reader doesn't really understand what you're talking about. If you have to force them to think about, oh, well, okay, I sort of understand what this company does, so I guess I can extrapolate and think, well, I understand how they might be able to help me. Can they? And you're putting a lot of load onto the reader to actually make the decisions that, for you really, that you would be a good fit. And that expectation is very high, especially if you put yourself in the reader's shoes for a second. They're getting probably dozens, if not hundreds of emails every day. And if they all kind of look the same, at some point your cognitive load is just too much as a reader. You're not going to respond to stuff. You're going to ignore most things that come through to you. So cutting through all those three problems, how do we do that? We do that in a couple of ways. So first of all, think about how your competitors are writing their emails. I'm going to guess that if your emails are not in great shape, well, the good news is neither are your competitors. And if you just do a couple little things, I want to emphasize how simple this is and how basic really this should be for everybody on this call to be able to cover. I want to think about how easily we should be able to shift our thinking to create messages that are very, very easy, very direct, and very simple, but don't take a lot of time to really sit down and strategize. That's the key point here. Is I want to consider what are things that we can do that make things almost like big dominoes that will move the needle for us a lot. And again, word count, UX, all that stuff about a good-looking email matters, but it doesn't matter as much as really choosing the right thing to speak to from the beginning. So if there was an easy way to do that, I think we should all be doing that, right? Let's keep going here. Now, of course, better messaging boosts sales, right? We know that if we are able to create better conversations quickly, that tends to move the needle for us where we want to see it in the revenue side of things. What sometimes happens is people get over excited about optimizing for open rates, for example. And if I, send out something like a subject line that says "F you," I might get a bunch of open rates, but do people want to talk to me, or are they saying, "What the hell's in my inbox?" Right? We don't want to be looking for over optimization right now, or sort of silly hacks and little, tricky things to manipulate the person into boosting our stats. We want things to start better conversation, better conversations with people who are actually looking forward to buying from us. We want to set up our salespeople down the road for success in these conversations. So choosing the right thing to talk about is really, really essential here. And finally, this is a way to really stand out and be memorable in a sea of mediocrity, I would argue. Most of us out there are fighting against a battle, a little bit of a tension, I guess, where people are hit from all sides in their inbox, on their social feeds. They're scrolling through various, on LinkedIn even, feeds of stuff. They've got TikTok. They've got all kinds of different platforms that are constantly notifying them about things. If you were able to write a sales email, a cold email specifically, that was so good that it stood out to them in that sea of confusion, not just in their inbox amongst a bunch of sales emails, but just in general, wouldn't that be a big win? I certainly think so. So let's keep going here and talk exactly about what to do. We're going to go through a ChatGPT prompt. We're going to go through some theory about how to do jobs to be done in general and job stories specifically. But I would like to take a second here and point out that this is a workflow. This is something that you can sit down and do in 7 steps. We're going to cover the 7 steps in detail here, but I want you to be able to take it and think where you can apply it in your company. This could be something that a sales rep does before they write their emails. If your team has sales reps actually writing their own emails, which whether that's a good idea or not is another question. Or it's something that you sit down and do on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis. It really depends up to you, however often you write campaigns. And that's very different for, SMB versus enterprise. It's probably a very different looking scenario. But whatever works for you, use this workflow when you sit down to write a new campaign for a new list. So here are the 3 core principles that we want to cover. But maybe I should back up for a second and say the jobs to be done methodology, for anybody out there who doesn't know what it is a way to look at customers from a more empathetic and sort of psychosocial, emotional level. Buying decisions are often not logical. So if we sit down from a very data-oriented sort of side of things and ask, why did somebody make this decision? You might get a bunch of good logical feedback. And actually, if you ask somebody directly, hey, why did you buy that car? They might sit down and give you some very logical reasons. And in truth, it's often not the logical reasons that cause them to buy. It's the emotional ones. It's the ones that, really, they had this thing on their mind, and on their hearts for a long time. And there was some sort of trigger that caused them to act. And even they don't really realize it, because when people are responding to you consciously, they're often giving you the answer that they think you want to hear. Again, whether they think they're doing that or not, that's often what happens. So what we want to do is sort of shift the line of questioning a little bit. That's what the jobs to be done methodology is. It's the idea that products are really hired to solve or to do a job for us temporarily, to fix something. So I need to fix a hole in my wall, for example. Well, I'm going to quote unquote hire some plastering and maybe a little bit of paint to fix that, to do that job for me and fix that problem. So we're looking for these things that have a lot of context, a lot of in the moment problem solving for us. And that's how we sort of want to approach what our products and services really are. They are things to do jobs for our customers. Now, if we flip these things around and on the slide here, say think and speak in the voice of the customer, a lot of us are out there thinking in value prop terms. So here's how I help you. This is how I help the world. I help you do this. Well, if you stop for a second and you say, from your customer's perspective, how would they describe you? And one exercise that you can even do is you can ask, maybe somebody who's friends with you, how would you describe what we do to another friend of ours? When you're taken out of the equation, and by you, I mean you, the company, you, the sales rep, you, the person who's inside the company that is selling outside, we really want to shift that thinking. And if we can think and speak in the voice of the customer, you'd be amazed by the dramatic improvements in the copy that you're going to create almost overnight. Sounds a little fluffy, but it's the truth. And if you can start to do this, I'll show you exactly how in a second. But this is one of the biggest takeaways I think I could offer as a copywriter in general, especially for people in tech, people who are very focused on, oh, wow, how this thing works, the amazing features of this whatnot, this widget here. Instead, can we really think about the problems that our customers are facing? Can we relate to them? How is this a little problem to them? Or is this something that they wake up in cold sweats at night about? They can't sleep because of this problem. Where do the problems rank? How does it feel for them? Is it life or death? Does their job depend on it? Or is it a sort of a little inconvenience? That's what we want to start digging into, because ultimately choosing the right problems from the customer's perspective is going to, and by customers, I mean each persona that buys from you, that's where the magic starts to happen from a copywriting perspective. Okay? So let's keep going here. when you're writing, one of the things that I see people do is they freeze up when there's a blank page in front of them, and that's not just writer's block. I think it's well, maybe a little bit of that, but in general, when we're trying to come up with the best way to connect with people and write the best cold email possible, a lot of people who do not come from a writing background will sit there and just sort of go, okay, type, 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 delete, 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 type, 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 delete, 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 and it takes a painstakingly long time to get something out. Instead, what you should be doing is creating en masse. So there's a little process that I talk about if you've ever watched any of the Voris material that goes ideate, create, and edit. Those are the 3 stages of writing. Ideate should be messy. Create should be a little less messy, but still messy. Then the editing, that's where you can use the delete button. That's where you can get a lot more concise. That's where you can chop things down. But if you ideate, create, and edit, very quickly, very in sort of loose format, you will create a lot of material. And by creating a lot of material outside of your head and onto paper, you will suddenly see things that you can then compare to each other. So for example, if somebody is stuck for their subject lines and they're struggling to write a better subject line, the number one exercise that I actually learned from another copywriter is to sit down and write 25 subject lines. And that is a very, very powerful thing. Why? Because writing out 25 subject lines sounds like a pain in the butt, doesn't it? Well, subject lines 1 through 10, you're just going to easily knock them out and they're going to all kind of sound the same. It's the stuff that you've already been thinking of. That just gets material out of your head. But then what we want to do is look at, okay, what did the next 10 look like? That your creativity starts to kick in a little bit. You're going to get stuck a little bit. You're going to, well, what if I said this? And then you have a different angle. And then those last 5, typically most people are going to have to strain for those last 5. And they really have to come up with like, I said everything, at number 20, number 21. Well, I guess I could say this. 22, 23, 24, 25. If you start to really stretch, you might be surprised what kind of ideas come out. Same thing applies not just to subject lines, but just copy in general and your creative, I think, brainstorming in general. Most people, I want to be very direct about this, do not do this. And even though I'm telling you to do this right now today, I think most people here will probably go off and not do what I'm suggesting. I've seen this happen many times, and I would suggest that this is a very, very important thing to consider doing, and it'll change how you create. By putting down a lot of ideas on paper or on a whiteboard, you can even do this as a team, you will see things in front of you and with much more clarity than you will if you just try to do everything mentally. Get things on paper, please. Okay? Once you have those, you will make much better decisions. And then finally, you need to focus on one problem at a time. This is something not just from write each email with one person in mind or one problem in mind. Of course, you should do that. But also, even when you're strategizing, you're looking, imagine you've done this exercise and you have a whole bunch of stuff up on your whiteboard, a whole bunch of ideas. Okay, well, can you really select one to then brainstorm on? Once you're done with the brainstorming, maybe to strategize on. Maybe that's a better way to put it. If you can then do that, you'll have a much better way to think about the type of problem that you're trying to solve and then start writing. I want to be very clear. Writing should be done in these stages. It's very important to separate these things out because it's almost like you're different people at each one of these different stages. It helps get up and go for a walk in between these stages. But ultimately, you need to choose which problem that you're going to focus on for this campaign, for this persona, and then come down and start to write it. And then we're going to get into a couple of directions of how to do that. So the number one thing that I want to cover here, and really if you take away one thing from today's session here is that I'd like you to think about job stories versus value props. So why do I say this? A job story, we'll get into exactly what it is in a second, but it's essentially, it's another framework of thinking that is similar to a value prop, but it switches the language from value prop, which is inward focused, to customer voice. And a value prop often looks like this. I help persona accomplish goal by my method or service, right? Now, instead, let's fill that out for a second. So I help, let's say, renewable energy companies accomplish sustainable energy production with energy efficiency analytics and optimization tools. Now, in a vacuum, when we all read this statement, we all understand what this means, right? So I have no issue of explaining yourself in general here by using a value prop. A value prop is a very good tool to use, but it's specifically effective when people come to you. So let's say you're at a dinner party, for example, or I don't know, you meet somebody out there, an old friend. Oh, what are you doing now? That kind of thing. Even if somebody visits your website, they're coming to you. So they're saying, hey, what do you do? And then you say, oh, well, I help renewable energy companies accomplish sustainable energy production with these analytics and optimization tools. Oh, cool. Interesting. This is very different, though, when you're starting to write outbound messaging. Now, I want you to consider this for a second and just kind of like, slow down with me here on this particular slide. Think about giving this to a rep on your team, or even think about yourself. I'm assuming if you're a founder here, you are a renewable energy CEO. You sit down with this value prop, and now I tell you, okay, please write a message, a cold email based on this value prop. Suddenly, I hope you notice the edges blur a little bit, and you go, well, wait a minute, this is suddenly kind of broad, isn't it? Well, who am I speaking to? When am I speaking to them? What's the actual problem I'm solving? I know what the tool is, great, but accomplish sustainable energy production. What does that really mean? It's not a good tool to use to create outbound. And we can get much more specific than this, which we'll do in a second. But I want you to imagine, a sales rep coming in, and maybe somebody even who doesn't have a lot of industry experience. Maybe they're not the engineer that you are as the founder of this renewable energy company. Giving them this information and saying, hey, knock yourself out. Is it any wonder that a lot of people struggle with cold emails? I don't think so. And I think this actually sets up people for failure, I think, quite a bit. So this is an important thing to get away from. Value props are great for internal strategy and messaging when people come to you. So they have their place. But for outbound, I would invite you to consider doing this instead. So a job story, again, comes from the jobs to be done methodology, which is all about putting the customer's voice first. Now, this is meant to be read from the perspective of the customer. When situation, I want to motivation, so that desired outcome. Okay, and what that could look like with that same example of the renewable energy company, that could look like this. When I'm facing fluctuating energy outputs from my solar farm because of changing weather, I want to analyze and predict energy production levels accurately so that I can optimize energy distribution and reduce waste. Do you see how much wildly more specific this is? This is dramatic. This is a big change. This would probably shift how you would build your list, right? So that's what I want to also mention here, is that not only does this give you more focus to suddenly write with more clarity, this also strategically gives you a more focused list to build around. Not every job story is going to have a pre-built list automatically there, and we're going to cover a couple more examples now together, and I'll show you exactly what I mean here. But I want to go back 1 second here, and everybody should actually take a quick screenshot if you haven't yet here, if you're watching this video. I help persona accomplish goal by method or service. That's the value prop. An example of that is I help renewable energy companies accomplish sustainable energy production with energy efficiency analytics and optimization tools. And then we're shifting things here to a job story where it's when situation, I want to motivation, so that desired outcome. And there are different formats of job stories. You're welcome to Google different versions. This happens to be the simplest and my favorite. And that looks like this ultimately. This is one example of a job story. You can generate endless job stories. When I'm facing fluctuating energy outputs from my solar farm because of changing weather, I want to analyze and predict energy production levels accurately so that I can optimize energy distribution and reduce waste. Now, why is that important from my perspective? I look at this and I say, well, that might mean that I might send this type of campaign out during changing weather. I might be looking at people who are dealing with solar farms that have measurably somehow changed their outputs for whatever reason. Maybe there's a certain age, maybe they're going through weather patterns, maybe there's whatever. But it gives me a clear trigger or two that I might be able to use to build my list with. Isn't that important, right? We can build a much more focused message here like this with a much more focused group of recipients. And again, these goals, they'll shift. We're going to go through a bunch of examples together now. But again, real quick, last time here. I help persona accomplish goal by method or service. That's the value prop. And then the job story is when situation, I want to motivation, so that desired outcome. If you start using job stories instead of value props with your team, you will overnight, today, start creating better messaging for your cold outbound for the people who you want to reach. Okay? Big deal. This is a hill I will die on when it comes to copy in general. And I hope that this helps everybody create better stuff here. So let's go through what this workflow looks like with ChatGPT, and I'll explain what exactly I want people to be doing. So first of all, let's talk about the 7 simple steps in the workflow. So first of all, we want to define the persona and the value prop, right? So who are you writing to? And then what's the value prop from your company? You can even do this in ChatGPT. You can put in your website and ask ChatGPT, what do you think my value prop is? You can do that when you're researching somebody. What do you think www.blank's value prop is? it'll tell you a version of that. Then you want to input this information into ChatGPT with the prompt that I'm about to give you. Step 3, we're going to get a bunch of different angles and ideas. Like I mentioned before, we want a lot of stuff to look at, right? We want as many options as possible, or at least a good healthy quantity, so that we're not just jumping to the first one. Then we want to rank the ideas. So out of the ideas, what this prompt does, it'll rank the ideas automatically, and you can. I like making 5 job stories at a time. You can make 50 if you want to. But what's really powerful about ChatGPT and AI that is very underrated now is, although it's pretty bad at copywriting, it's very good at thinking, if that makes any sense. So right now, ChatGPT is quite good at basically telling you why it thinks certain messages and certain job stories might be more compelling than others. Then we're going to look for trigger events. So I mentioned the weather patterns. Maybe there's something going on because somebody's going to go through and they're planning to build a new solar field somewhere. They're planning to expand something. Well, okay, that's another trigger event that we can probably look for with a little bit of research. Then you want to, build a list, not built a list, but you want to build a list based on that trigger event. And then finally, step 7, you want to write whatever you're trying to write. Now, this could be, we're talking about cold emails a lot because that's what we do here at Voris, but this could be for anything. This could be for, content even. This could be for social. This could be for yourself when you're on LinkedIn creating some content on behalf of your own account. These are the steps that I would take to get to a place where you can start to write strong messaging. So we're going to get to exactly what to do to use this here. So, actually, before I get into the problem, real quick. So I'm going to go through a couple points here. This forces you to focus on one specific idea while writing. This is a big deal. Again, we've mentioned why, but I really think it's important that you start from a place of focus and then start basically doing your edits. And then finally, it gives you a bunch of different ideas to choose from, and it makes writing much, much easier to do and easier to read. This is very, very simple to do. This should be something that you can do again today. You can really change the way that you think about things. Your value props and the perspective that you write from. I mentioned content, got sidetracked for a second. So with your content, it can be about your own value prop. It can be about your target persona's value prop. You can write from a bunch of different angles. When it comes to your cold outbound, you want to be writing from the perspective of your customer. I want to be very clear about that. And this is the prompt. So, if you're watching this video, just take a second to take a screenshot of this, and then you should be good to go here. But, it's basically, let me read this to you because I think it's important. So imagine a B2B SaaS company, and then insert the company name, with the following value proposition and target audience. So here's the value prop. And then you want to describe the value prop. You want to just plug that in right there. Target audience. You want to define the target audience. Based on this, create 5 job stories for the company, focusing on how its product or service addresses specific scenarios and needs of the target audience. Each job story should follow this format. When, situation, I want to, motivation, so that I can, desired outcome or benefit. After creating the job stories, evaluate and rank them based on their impact and relevance to the target audience. Explain your reasoning for the ranking, focusing on factors such as the universality of the need, potential impact on the customer's business, and the emotional resonance of the story. End your response by summarizing how these job stories collectively showcase the value of the company to its target audience. So based on this, that's really the prompt. And I would use this, try it out. You might have to tweak little things around your company and your audience, but this is what I use as my jumping off point with a lot of the thinking that we do over at some of our Voris when we do training with our clients and even with some of our own stuff. So this is it. The workflow, again, just to go back to that for 1 second here. We want to define the persona. We want to input it into ChatGPT. We want to get a bunch of different ideas, rank the ideas. ChatGPT will do that for you, but you should also keep an eye there on it. Look for trigger events, build your list, and then write your emails and messages and all that good stuff. And with that said, let's go on to some Q&A here. And I'm also excited to show you some examples from ChatGPT and some of the stuff that I've been working on. So let me just quickly show you what the Eco Energy Insight, that renewable energy company example that I wanted to that I went through in the presentation and why that's important. So what this prompt does is it spits out this response. So here's the value prop, here's the target audience. Based on this, here are the 5 job stories. And it comes up with these 5 stories. So I used story 1 in the presentation. This is about the farm with the fluctuating energy outputs. But when I asked it to rank and evaluate the job stories, it actually ranked number 3 as the most powerful one. So let's look at this. When a renewable energy company is planning to expand its operations to a new location, they want to assess the potential energy yield of different renewable sources in that area so that they can make informed investment decisions. Interesting, right? So that might be messaging that would be, you might sit down and write something very focused around, how to make the best investment decision based on the tool that we use. Maybe my SaaS platform can help you make those decisions more strategically. This is the kind of stuff where going from a farm with fluctuating output based on weather to expanding and looking at the ROI of the investment to let's look at this. When a renewable energy company aims to optimize their energy storage systems, they want to understand and predict energy demand patterns so that they can reduce operational costs and improve energy availability during peak times. So this is almost like economics and forecasting and whatnot. So if you have the capability to do that, maybe this is the message that you should focus on. This is the stuff that we should be looking at. So I see a couple more questions coming in here. Sam, you said when you say define your persona and value prop, are you saying that the company I work for, or I see. So Sam, basically I'm saying that you should be looking at the company that you're targeting. So this is strategy stuff. This is not final copy. This is the idea to say, okay, well, I'm going to sit down today and create a campaign to reach my customers. Who am I really speaking to? Well, let's say that I'm speaking to the CEO of these companies. What's the best angle to take? That's where this comes in. And if you can sit down and say, all right, well, give me some ideas for campaigns. And you get these 5 ideas back from ChatGPT, you can say, well, okay, actually, we just finished a calculator that does all the forecasting. My tool has a calculator. We'll show you exactly how to do this predictions. Our tool is used by Goldman Sachs and a bunch of investment companies, so it should be useful for you too as you make your decisions with your energy storage costs. Okay, well, do I have a tool that supports this? My point here, guys, is that these job stories, not all of them are going to be completely relevant to your company, but they're probably relevant to your customer. So what you want to look for is, are these, first of all, relevant to the customer? Do they sound like pain points that I've heard about from the customer's perspective? And then based on these, can I come up with something that really speaks to me from my perspective to sell with? And if you can aim at that, that's where creating the emails, that's another topic. That's sort of sitting down and saying, okay, well, when I create an email, I'm going to write a cold email that's no longer than 50 words. And I'm stealing this from Lavender, by the way. This is a great, Will Allred from Lavender is a great follow on LinkedIn. Basically look at the best practices of an email. Keep it short, keep it focused, use a soft CTA at the end of the email. That's the easy stuff to do. I want today to really be focused on what should you talk about? What should you choose to talk about in your campaigns? I would encourage you all to learn to use ChatGPT, like this, because it is very, very powerful once you start to understand how and where to play around with strategy and sort of logic. And sort of, you can ask the questions like, what are we missing here? What else do you think would be good? Why do you think job story number 4 is the weakest? Why is that? But let's go through a couple more examples here. I just want to show you a couple of examples and why I think that this eco-energy thing was, I used to work in clean tech and then solar, so this spoke to me, but I would love to see some other examples. If somebody wants to drop their target audience or their company or whatever into chat, I can spin something up on the spot with you all here. Here, let's do Ravi's for a second and then copy that. And this is the way that I would go through it. So, okay, now I'd like to look at job stories for another example. I sell a customer analytics tool to SMB retail companies. Please use this information along with this prompt. And then I think I have to cut off that first line that I just created. Okay, so let's see what this does. So it's coming up with a fake name, Ravi, for your company because we don't know it, but comes up with a value prop that it might be getting a little bit ahead of itself, but I think that sounds good. Now, looking at this, it's come up with these 5 stories for Ravi, and then it then ranks them in order of 2, 1, 5, 3, and 4. And then it gives you a reason why it thinks number 2 is the strongest. So let's look at what job story number 2 was. When an SMB retail company is launching a new product line, they want to target customers most likely to be interested so that they can maximize the effectiveness of their marketing efforts and increase sales. Okay. So I'm not sure if I totally agree with that without reading the others yet, but I don't know, Ravi, you tell us if that's relevant and if it's easy to build a list around potentially. But let's look at some of this other stuff. So I like job story number one a lot. When an SMB retail company notices a decline in repeat customers, they want to analyze customer purchase history and feedback so that they can identify patterns and improve customer satisfaction. That feels very tangible. That feels like something that an analytics firm can basically create content around, but also reach out directly and sort of look for that problem specifically. So, Ravi, I hope that helps. So yeah, Ravi, so the more detail that you give it, the better the job stories are going to come out with. So I encourage you to use it, make it your own. And then if you face any problems, let me know. But then also if you have some good results, I'd love to hear back from you too. So yeah, so hey, Tom and Greg, I have a value prop for jobs template and C for job stories. Hey, Tom, basically the value prop is I help persona achieve goal by method or service. And then the job story is when motivation, when situation, I want to motivation in order to desired outcome. So yeah, Ravi's story one is good. And so even that, you can then ask ChatGPT, which I'm not going to do in this thread because it's going to spoil things a bit. But if I were you, Ravi, I would then say, out of all these stories, job story number one is way more powerful. Please create 5 more that are more like job story number one. The more you do with this, the better ideas you get. You do not get good copy out of this, but you get very good ideas. Okay, so let's go through another example here. Abin, we basically are into issuing gift cards for online stores to increase brand visibility and acquisition. So let's do this again here and say, oh, Georgette, yeah, we'll do yours too. Just give me a second now. I hope everybody's finding value in this. I would like everybody to make it their own. I believe templates there's limited value in copy pasting things directly. You should be trying to edit this and make it better for yourself. So let's look at this here and see, Abin, you said exactly what? Into issuing gift cards. Let me just grab that text over here. To issuing gift cards. Issue gift cards for online stores to increase value. Okay, so let's do that and then see what comes out. And I want to emphasize, this is with sort of like 80% proper value props and stuff that I'm getting from you guys. So if you do it for yourself here, you will get better stuff, I promise. And so here's the fake company that it's created on your behalf, Abin. But so when an online store wants to turn one-time shoppers into repeat customers, they want to offer personalized gift cards. Boom. When an online store is looking to increase sales during off-peak seasons, that's interesting, right? These are totally different campaigns, guys. I get excited seeing this because I can imagine selling around this. This is not all of these are as strong as each other, but so it thinks that job story number one is the most powerful, but number two, which I didn't read yet, is let's see this one, or the second most powerful is job story 5. When an online store aims to improve customer loyalty, they want to implement a gift cards reward program for frequent shoppers so that they can enhance customer retention and increase lifetime value. That's okay, but what's missing here for me is a time element. Like I don't really know how to look for a trigger event around this. I can reach out to companies and say, hey, do you want to increase your customer loyalty? But every company is going to say that. So I would look for moments where you can find some sort of context where there's a specific time element that you can use here. And we're going to do one more here and then we'll call it. But let me see, Georgette, let's see here. And Georgette, where do you go here? Let's see here. Let's customize automations. We help companies with daily manual tasks, streamline operations, and enhance their ROI, cut costs, and maximize efficiency. Please use this information along with this prompt. So let's see if might be a little complicated, but let's see if this is relevant. So Jerry, it's a good question. I would suggest that you use this as a strategic element before you actually reach out. This is something to help you choose a focal point when you reach out. So let's say that I'm not running any campaigns or I'm looking to build a new one, basically. If I sit down and I say, okay, well, who am I targeting? I want to target this kind of company. Well, okay, let's create a couple job stories and then let's choose one that is a good element that we can put together that might be we can find a trigger event around, we can build a list around, and then we can create a very focused message and campaign. Hope that makes sense. And yeah, so Abin says he tried story number 1 and 2 and they've worked. So what I would suggest is that you, even when you're conversing with ChatGPT, you go through this whole process and you say, I actually did 1 and 2 and they were good. What else can you give me? Why did those 1 and 2 work so well? Why do you think it worked, ChatGPT? And you might not get the correct answer or even a good answer, but you often do. So let's just cover this real quick, and then you let me know here, Georgette, if this is relevant here. So let's say which one it chose number 1 is most powerful. When a finance department spends excessive time on manual data entry and reconciliation, they want to automate these processes so that they can reduce errors, save time, and reallocate staff to more strategic tasks. Is that relevant? I feel like that's one of those things that's hard to look for me when I'm looking for a trigger event. But if we say, let's see, when a company's HR department manually processes employee onboarding, maybe. When a retail company struggles with inventory management due to manual tracking, maybe. And then when a marketing department manually segments and sends out emails, they want to automate their campaigns based on customer behavior. So actually, I think job story number 5 might be very easy to find out stuff about. You can even couch this in a bunch of different ways that I would imagine that I want to emphasize how important it is to attach that time element. If you have a time element in your strategy docs, which was what this is, that's where, or when I say time, I mean timing. How do I know that they're doing manual stuff? How do I know that they're currently struggling with overload? How do you know that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And if you can come up with maybe you have the answer for that, maybe you can turn this into a fantastic campaign. But I would suggest that you dig into this a little bit more and even ask it to give you some job stories with more context and a time-based element. Let's go ahead and end it here, folks. I hope this was helpful for everybody. Take care of yourselves. We'll speak soon. See you later.